Welcome chess friends. In this video I'm going to discuss a Scotch Gambit game between Wesley So and Nodirbek Abdusattorov played in the last round of the Sinquefield Cup. Wesley So needed a win in order to make a chance to win the tournament and to equalize with the leaders Caruana and Praggnanandhaa. He chose the Scotch Gambit for this game. So let's look at the first moves. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6. And Wesley's own course on Chessable continues knight g5. But of course this gives very forcing lines that the grandmasters are well aware of. So this is the line that he has in his quick starter guide, 21 moves. And you can see it's very sharp, but at the same time in the end you get a very equal position, and it's probably a line that is well analyzed by both sides because they check the chessable courses of their opponents. So after knight f6, Wesley So chose for d4, and now we are entering the Scotch Gambit. And now Abdusattorov chose for the move knight d7. So most played in this position is of course the line with starting with knight e4 and then knight takes d4, and now there are two moves, bishop d7 and bishop c5. Most played is bishop d7, and this is how it continues. So after bishop b5, Abdusattorov chose for knight d7. So knight d7 is played in the master database 12% of the time, and also in the Lichess Rapid and Classical database in 12% of the time, and knight e4 is played over 80% of the time. So let's continue. Knight d4 attacks the pawn on c6, knight b8 defends the pawn on c6, knight c3 develops, castle, queen f3. So queen f3 is indirectly attacking the rook on a8. And why is that important? Well, let's play a bad move for black just to illustrate. Right, so it prevents actually it prevents black from playing the move c5. So in this position there are two moves which are most frequently played. The first one is a5, and the idea is to move the rook to a6, so it's out of the indirect attack by the queen, and black is threatening c5, taking more control over the center. And of course there are also associated plans with a4, and the rook on a6 after c5 can also go to, for instance, g6. So most frequently played here is this. So black got c5 in, and white is still a little bit better, threatening to take on d5 at the moment, and after d4 the knight goes to e4, and white is slightly better. The alternative after queen f3 is queen d7, threatening queen g4 with the trade of the queens. White has to prevent that, and you can see this is kind of a similar line. Black prepares rook a6, and after in this line white plays queen g3 with the idea of course to play bishop h6. So queen d7, h3 to prevent queen g4, a5, queen g3 with the threat of bishop h6, and that would lose an exchange to prevent the mate, so king h8 and bishop g5, and white is slightly better. So here we can see that Abdusattorov was not completely familiar with this line and plays the suboptimal bishop e6. And Wesley So continued now with knight e2, but you can see in a few lines that I'm going to show what the issue is with bishop e6, right? So, for instance, after queen g3 with the same threat of bishop h6, king h8, take, queen h3, attacking the pawn on e6. And after queen d7, bishop e3, just development moves, white is slightly better. Or the immediate knight takes e6, queen g4, again attacking this pawn, right? And again, white completes that development and has ideas to bring the knight to f4 or d4 and to put more pressure on the pawn on e6. So bishop e6 is suboptimal because white can take the bishop and then pressure e6 and also start an attack on the king side. And if we look, of course, to grandmaster play, it's not only about playing the best move, but finding a line that your opponent is not completely familiar with and that gives you a chance to play for the win. So Wesley continued here with knight e2, and so in queen g3, very thematic, we already saw that, bishop h6 is being threatened, and now he also takes on e6, we also saw that in the other lines, after queen g3, and knight takes e6 immediately, undermines the black center. And now at this moment you can say that white is already just better, right? So white sets up a double attack, attacking the pawn on e6 and threatening knight g6 with a double attack on king h8 and the rook on f8. There's only one move to prevent it, but that accelerates the kingside attack by white, so g4, rook f7, and now of course white wants to continue with moves like f4 and start a steamroller with the pawns, so the knight gets out of the way. And here we get the start of the steamroller, and now we get a very interesting maneuver by white. So black is a bit desperate and gives up a pawn on the a file just to damage the pawn structure and create counterplay. White just takes the pawn, white defends it, and now this is a moment to stop for a moment, and Wesley So now started the maneuver king g2, king f2, king e2, king d1, king c2, king b3. So he brings his king into safety, puts it on b3, releases the knight from the duty of protecting the pawn on a4, and then can complete the attack on the king side. So a very impressive king walk, and it's definitely for me in the top 10. And the top 1 is probably still the game between Short and Timman, where Short moved his king up to h6 to assist the queen in mating. So we see now the maneuver being carried out. And let's take a moment. The black king is unsafe. If we compare the knight on b2 versus the bishop on d8, the bishop on d8 is quite bad. It's looking at his own pawn on c5, for instance. And there's another thing, so a4, right? Black damaged white's pawn structure. But if black tries to defend by trading all the pieces, suddenly this becomes a very dangerous pass pawn. So originally, of course, black said, I'm damaging your pawn structure, creating counterplay. But now we see also the disadvantage that it's possible for white to exchange all the pieces and then win with the passed pawn on a4. And so basically here Abdusattorov is already completely lost, and you can see how Wesley continued his attack, trading pieces, infiltrating with the queen, now playing knight d3, so there's no queen f2 in the position, so making sure that the opponent doesn't get any counterplay. And right, pinning the bishop, attacking the pawn on e6. So you can see black has many weaknesses, the pawn on c5, the pawn on e6. And in this position, after g5, black resigned because g5 is luring away the queen from the defense of the pawn on e6, and black is completely lost. So I thought it was a very impressive game by Wesley So, and it's also interesting for me that he chose the Scotch Gambit in this must-win situation, and he preferred this line over his own chessable course. So the Scotch Gambit gets played at the highest level at critical moments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I wish you a lot of fun playing the Scotch Gambit in your own games. Thank you. Bye bye.